The council chamber stretched vast and magnificent, filled with representatives from 300 worlds. High Chancellor Voresh stood at the central podium, his blue skin darker than usual. The holographic display behind him showed red spreading across the star maps like a disease. "Another sector has fallen," he announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. "The Krthak swarm has taken the outer rim colonies. 15 billion souls gone in 3 weeks." Silence greeted his words. It was the silence of fear. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human delegation section, watching the council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. She had seen this coming for months. The swarm was different from anything the galaxy had faced in 1,000 years. They did not negotiate. They did not stop. They simply consumed everything in their path. "Our military forces attempted a defensive position at the barrier worlds," continued a general, whose name Chen could never pronounce. "The swarm overwhelmed them in 48 hours. We lost 400 ships." More silence. Chen noticed how the older council members avoided looking at certain parts of the historical records displayed on their personal screens. She knew what they were avoiding. The same records that mentioned humanity's first contact with the galaxy 200 years ago. Back then, Earth had been classified as a Class 12 death world. The Council had been shocked to find intelligent life there. Most death worlds killed their species long before they reached space travel, but humans had not just survived Earth. They had thrived on it, fought it, and conquered it. The first contact had been peaceful mostly. There had been some conflicts, small wars where human tactics had disturbed the more civilized species. But that was ancient history now. Humans had integrated well. They ran trade routes, served as peacekeepers, and contributed to galactic society. They seemed just like everyone else. "We must consider all options," said Council Member Tresh, a young representative from the avian clusters. His feathers were ruffled with agitation. "I have reviewed the historical databases. Earth maintains specialized military units designed for extreme warfare scenarios. Perhaps we should request their assistance." The chamber erupted in discussion. Chen kept her face neutral, but she felt Colonel Sarah Reeves shift beside her. The colonel was Earth's military liaison, a quiet woman who rarely spoke during council sessions. "Absolutely not," declared Voresh, his voice cutting through the noise. "Humanity has evolved beyond such barbarism. They are civilized now, members of our community. We cannot ask them to regress to their violent past." "With respect, High Chancellor," Tresh pressed on, "the records indicate that human combat effectiveness was unprecedented during the contact wars. In every engagement, human forces achieved victory despite being technologically inferior." "Those records are exaggerated," another council member interjected. Fear and ignorance colored those early reports. "Humans are no more capable than any other species at warfare." Chen watched Colonel Reeves from the corner of her eye. The colonel's expression had not changed, but something about her stillness seemed more pronounced. Like a predator watching prey argue about whether it existed. "The swarm advances toward the core worlds," Tresh said desperately. "In 6 months they will reach the council home systems. We must act." The debate continued for hours. Chen participated when required, offering Earth support for refugee operations and humanitarian aid. She carefully did not mention Earth's military capabilities. That was not her role. As the session ended, Voresh approached the human delegation. His diplomatic smile was firmly in place, but Chen could see the stress in his eyes. "Ambassador Chen, I apologize for the earlier discussion. Some of our younger members do not understand that humans have moved past their violent origins." "No apology necessary, High Chancellor," Chen replied smoothly, "though I should mention that Colonel Reeves has been instructed to answer any questions the Council might have about Earth's current military status." Voresh glanced at the colonel, who stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back. Something about her military bearing seemed to unsettle him. "That won't be necessary," he said quickly. "The Council will find a solution through our own forces." Over the following weeks, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The swarm took 2 more sectors. Council fleets engaged them in desperate battles and lost every time. The swarm adapted to every tactic, learned from every engagement, and pressed forward relentlessly. Chen attended emergency sessions every day now. She watched the Council's confidence crumble as casualty reports mounted. Their military doctrine was built on centuries of relative peace, broken only by minor conflicts easily resolved through superior technology and defensive positions. The swarm cared nothing for their advantages. They fight like animals, one general complained after a particularly devastating loss. No strategy, no tactics, just overwhelming aggression. Colonel Reeves finally spoke, her voice quiet but clear. That is a strategy, General, and it is working against you. The general stared at her, shocked that she had spoken. What would you suggest, Colonel? That we abandon civilization and fight like beasts? I suggest nothing, Reeves replied. I am simply observing. You fight to minimize casualties and preserve resources. The swarm fights to win. There is a difference. The chamber fell silent. Chen knew what everyone was thinking but did not want to say. There was a species in the galaxy that understood the swarm's mindset. A species that had evolved fighting for survival against a planet that constantly tried to kill them. 3 months after the crisis began, the swarm reached the inner territories. 2 Council core worlds fell in a single week. Panic spread through the galaxy. Refugees fled in massive waves, overwhelming every available ship and station. The emergency session was different this time. Voresh looked like he had aged a decade in 3 months. His confidence had evaporated, replaced by the desperate expression of someone watching his civilization collapse. We need help, he said simply. No diplomatic language, no formal speeches, just the raw admission of defeat. Ambassador Chen, Colonel Reeves, we formally request Earth's military assistance. All of it. Whatever you have, whatever you can send, we need it now. The chamber watched as Colonel Reeves stepped forward. She did not consult notes or hesitate. Earth will respond to your request, High Chancellor. I will transmit the formal acceptance immediately. However, I must be clear about what you are asking for. You are not requesting peacekeepers or defensive forces. You are requesting the activation of Earth's Special Operations Command. These units have not seen full deployment in over a century. They are not peacekeepers. They are not civilized. They are what we created to ensure humanity's survival against extinction-level threats. Voresh swallowed hard. We understand, Colonel. We are asking for Earth's warriors. No, Reeves corrected, her eyes meeting his. You are asking for Earth's hunters. There is a difference. We will send them. But when this is over, the galaxy will remember why we agreed to put those weapons away in the first place. She saluted the council and left the chamber. Chen followed, leaving behind a room full of representatives who were beginning to understand that they might have made a terrible mistake alongside a necessary one. As they walked through the corridors, Chen spoke quietly. Will Earth really send them? Reeves nodded. The orders went out 10 minutes ago. The Special Operations Command has been activated. By tomorrow, the 1st Battalions will be deploying to the front lines. And the galaxy? The galaxy is about to remember something it chose to forget, Ambassador. It is about to remember that humans did not climb to the top of Earth's food chain by being civilized. We became civilized after we won. The swarm is about to learn what we were like before we chose peace. Chen looked back at the council chamber. Through the windows, she could see the star map still painted with the swarm's advance. Soon she thought those maps would show something else, something the galaxy had not seen in 2 centuries. They would show what happened when humanity stopped holding back. The response from Earth came faster than anyone expected. Within 24 hours of the Council's formal request, confirmation messages began arriving at every major military installation in the galaxy. The messages were brief and professional. Earth was mobilizing. Major Marcus Chen stood in the briefing room of the ESS Valkyrie watching his team assemble. The 5th Deathworld Reconnaissance Battalion had not operated as a full unit in 93 years. Most of the current members had never seen actual combat outside of training exercises that would kill soldiers from any other species. Listen up, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the quiet conversations. We have our deployment orders. The Krethak swarm has taken 8 sectors and is pushing toward Council core worlds. Standard military forces have failed to stop them. We are being sent to the Helios sector to establish a forward operating base and begin offensive operations. He pulled up the tactical display. The swarm's positions glowed red across multiple star systems. Intelligence reports indicate the swarm operates as a hive mind. They adapt quickly to conventional tactics. Council forces have been trying defensive warfare and strategic retreats. It hasn't worked. Corporal Yuki Tanaka raised her hand. She was the battalion's senior combat medic, small and quiet, with hands that could perform surgery in 0 gravity during a firefight. What are our rules of engagement, sir? Protocol 7, Marcus replied. The room went silent. Protocol 7 was designed for extinction-level threats. It removed most of the restrictions that normally governed human military operations. The soldiers understood what that meant. Earth was not sending them to help the Council's military. Earth was sending them to end the threat regardless of cost. We deploy in 6 hours, Marcus continued. Full combat load. Environmental suits rated for Class 12 conditions. We will be operating in environments that the Council species cannot survive. That is our advantage. Use it. As the briefing ended, the soldiers moved to prepare. Marcus watched them go, feeling the weight of what was coming. These men and women were volunteers, trained since childhood in the arts of warfare that humanity had tried to leave behind. They were the result of centuries of evolution on a planet that wanted them dead, refined by decades of training designed to make them even more lethal. Across Earth, similar scenes played out. The 3rd Orbital Assault Regiment prepared their dropships. The 12th Long-Range Reconnaissance Team loaded equipment designed for months-long operations behind enemy lines. The 7th Chemical and Biological Warfare Unit, a group that made even other human soldiers nervous, reviewed their protocols. In the secure bunkers beneath Geneva, the Special Operations Command coordinated the largest military mobilization in human history since the Contact Wars. Screens showed battalion deployments, logistics chains, and weapon authorizations. The people in that room moved with calm efficiency, but they knew what they were unleashing. General Patricia Okonkwo, commander of Special Operations Command, stood before a holographic display of the entire crisis zone. She was 70 years old and had spent 50 of those years in the military. She had been a lieutenant during the Contact Wars, one of the few who understood what human forces were truly capable of when pressed. "The Council thinks they know what they have asked for," she said to her staff. "They remember the history files. They think they understand. They do not. Should we warn them again, ma'am?" Her aide asked. "We warned them." Colonel Reeves was very clear. They chose to proceed. Okonkwo's expression was grim. "Notify all commands. Rules of engagement are Protocol 7, but we will maintain proportional response doctrine. These are still sentient beings we are fighting, even if they are a hive mind. We will be efficient, but we will not be cruel. We are humans, not monsters." "Yes, ma'am. And attach Council observers to every battalion. I want them to see exactly what we do and why we do it. No surprises, no misunderstandings. They asked for this. They will witness it." One of those observers was Zixlar, a mantis-like being from the Clicking Isles. He had served as a military analyst for 40 years and had volunteered to observe the human deployment. He was assigned to Marcus Chen's battalion. Zixlar entered the Valkyrie's deployment bay and stopped, his compound eyes taking in the scene. The human soldiers moved through pre-combat checks with mechanical precision. Their armor was matte black, covered in equipment that Zixlar did not recognize. They were not tall by galactic standards, but there was something about the way they moved that triggered instincts Zixlar did not know he had. "Observer Zixlar." Marcus approached him, offering the human greeting of a handshake. "Welcome to the 5th Battalion. I am Major Chen, Battalion Commander." "Thank you, Major," Zixlar replied, his translator rendering his clicks into standard galactic. "I am honored to observe your operations. We are deploying to a contested world in the Helios sector. The environment is hostile, high gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature variations. The swarm has established hive structures there. Our mission is to eliminate them." Zixlar consulted his datapad. "The Council forces attempted to take this world 3 times. They could not operate on the surface for more than 2 hours before the environment began killing them." "Yes," Marcus said. "That is why they sent us. This world is rated Class 8 on the Deathworld scale. Unpleasant, but manageable. We have trained in worse." "Class 8 is manageable?" Zixlar's antennae twitched in confusion. "Earth is Class 12 observer. Class 8 is a mild vacation compared to some of Earth's environments." Marcus gestured to the soldiers preparing their equipment. "Every person in this battalion has completed survival training in Earth's deep oceans, volcanic regions, and Arctic wastelands. We are comfortable being uncomfortable." The deployment began. Zixlar strapped into a human transport ship, surrounded by soldiers who sat quietly checking weapons and equipment. There was no bravado, no fear, just professional focus. As they approached the contested world, alarms began sounding. The swarm had detected them. Plasma bursts lit up the view screen as enemy fire filled the space around them. 30 seconds to drop. the pilot announced calmly. The soldiers stood, connecting their armor to overhead rails. Zixlar realized with horror that they were going to drop directly into the combat zone. Through active enemy fire, into an environment that could kill most galactic species in minutes. "Observer, you should stay with the ship," Marcus said, his helmet sealing with a hiss. "The surface is not safe." "I must observe," Zixlar replied, though his survival instincts screamed at him to refuse. Marcus nodded and handed him a human-made environmental suit. "Then stay close to Corporal Tanaka. If anything happens, she will keep you alive." The doors opened. The soldiers dropped into hell. Zixlar fell with them, his suit straining against the gravity. Below he could see the swarm forces swarming toward the drop zone. Thousands of creatures moving as one organism. Council forces would have retreated, called for orbital support, tried to find a better position. The humans landed and immediately began moving forward, directly toward the enemy. Zixlar watched in shock as the battle unfolded. The humans did not take defensive positions. They advanced through fire that should have pinned them down. When swarm creatures closed to melee range, the humans fought hand-to-hand without hesitation. They moved through the toxic atmosphere like it was nothing, operated in gravity that made every step a struggle for Zixlar, and coordinated their attacks with a precision that matched the swarm's hive mind. But it was not the fighting that shocked Zixlar most. It was what happened after. When a human soldier was injured, the others did not leave him. Corporal Tanaka ran through enemy fire to reach wounded soldiers, stabilizing them while still shooting at enemies. The humans fought like animals but cared for each other like family. "Objective secured," Marcus reported after 4 hours of continuous combat. "Hive structure destroyed. No human casualties. 15 wounded, all stable." Zixlar looked at the battlefield. The swarm forces had been completely eliminated. The humans were already establishing a defensive perimeter and tending to their wounded. They had done in 4 hours what the Council could not do in 3 attempts. As they returned to orbit, Zixlar began writing his first report. His hands shook as he typed. The Council had asked for help from the humans, but Zixlar was not sure if they understood what they had actually unleashed. These were not soldiers. These were evolution's most successful predators, trained to even greater lethality and given purpose. The galaxy was about to change. Zixlar just hoped it survived the change. The Helios sector became the focal point of the galaxy's attention. News networks from 1,000 worlds broadcast continuous updates as human forces engaged the swarm across multiple systems. What they showed disturbed species that had known only civilized warfare for centuries. The humans did not fight like the Council's military. They did not establish defensive lines and wait for the enemy to attack. Instead, they hunted. In the Tertian system, the 3rd Orbital Assault Regiment dropped directly into a swarm hive world that Council forces had abandoned as unrecoverable. The planet's atmosphere was methane-based, toxic to most oxygen-breathing species. The swarm had chosen it precisely because Council forces could not operate there effectively. The human dropships descended through storms that would tear apart most spacecraft. They landed in the middle of swarm territory and immediately began offensive operations. Within 72 hours, the swarm forces on the planet were in retreat. Within a week, the planet was clear. Council military analysts watched the recordings in stunned silence. The humans had operated in an environment that should have killed them, fought in conditions that made electronic equipment fail, and won decisively. When asked how they had done it, the human commander simply stated that Earth had environments just as hostile, and humans had learned to thrive in them. Major Marcus Chen's 5th Battalion continued operations across the sector. They specialized in reconnaissance and elimination of high-value targets. Where the swarm established command nodes, the 5th would infiltrate, often spending days behind enemy lines and environments that would kill other species in hours. Observer Zixlar continued documenting everything. His reports grew longer and more detailed with each engagement. He wrote about watching human soldiers operate in temperatures that would freeze most beings solid. He documented their ability to go without sleep for days during critical operations. He noted their disturbing comfort with violence, combined with their paradoxical compassion for their own wounded and even, occasionally, for injured enemy creatures. One incident particularly troubled him. The 5th Battalion had been surrounded by swarm forces in a canyon system on Helios Prime. Outnumbered 10 to 1, cut off from support, with wounded that could not be evacuated. Council doctrine would have called for surrender or last-stand defense. Marcus Chen had ordered his forces to go dark. All communications ceased. Council command feared the worst. 3 days later, the battalion's transponders reactivated. They were walking out of swarm territory, carrying their wounded along with several captured swarm specimens for intelligence analysis. The entire sector behind them had been cleared of swarm presence. What happened in there? High Chancellor Voresh demanded during a secure communication with Marcus. "We did what needed to be done, Chancellor," Marcus replied calmly. "The swarm attempted to overwhelm us with numbers. We used the terrain, our knowledge of swarm behavior, and our ability to survive in harsh conditions. We turned their trap into ours, but how? The tactical analysis suggests you were hopelessly outnumbered." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Chancellor, humans evolved as persistence hunters. We did not have claws or natural armor. We could not outrun our prey, so we learned to outlast them. We would track prey for days, pushing them to exhaustion, never letting them rest. The swarm tried to overwhelm us. We simply refused to stop fighting. Eventually, they broke." Voresh ended the communication deeply unsettled. He was beginning to understand what Colonel Reeves had tried to warn them about. The humans were not just good at warfare. They had evolved for it. Their entire survival strategy as a species was built on being more persistent, more adaptable, and more willing to push through impossible conditions than anything else on their planet. The swarm was learning the same lesson, though more painfully. The hive mind had conquered dozens of species using the same tactics: overwhelming numbers, relentless aggression, and rapid adaptation. It had never encountered a species that matched its aggression and exceeded its adaptability. Swarm forces began exhibiting new behaviors. They retreated when humans appeared. They avoided engaging in conditions humans preferred. The hive mind, which had never known fear, was learning caution. Human military intelligence noted these changes. They adjusted their tactics accordingly. If the swarm wanted to avoid fighting in harsh environments, the humans would force every battle into the worst conditions possible. They began operations in radiation zones deep underwater on hostile worlds, and in the vacuum of damaged space stations. Corporal Yuki Tanaka earned a reputation across the human forces during an operation on Station Xander 7. The swarm had infested the station, which housed 50,000 civilian refugees from multiple species. Council forces considered the station lost, but the refugees could not be evacuated in time. The 5th Battalion was sent to extract as many civilians as possible. They found the station worse than expected. The swarm had breached life support systems. Sections of the station were in vacuum. Others were filled with toxic gases. The environmental conditions changed from room to room. Yuki moved through the chaos with her medical team. They found refugees trapped in sealed sections, injured and dying. While the combat teams held off the swarm, Yuki performed surgery in zero gravity, treated radiation poisoning with limited supplies, and kept dozens of beings from different species alive through sheer skill and determination. When a section of the station depressurized unexpectedly, Yuki found herself in vacuum with 3 injured refugees. She had 30 seconds before they died. Without hesitation, she created a makeshift pressure seal using her own suit's emergency repair systems, sacrificing her own air supply to keep the refugees alive until rescue arrived. She survived because she could hold her breath longer than most species could believe possible. Another gift from Earth, where human ancestors had dived deep underwater to hunt for food. The 5th Battalion extracted 47,000 refugees. Council forces had estimated saving maybe 5,000. The human willingness to operate in impossible conditions had made the difference. Across the sector, similar stories spread. Humans fighting in conditions no one else could survive. Humans refusing to abandon objectives or teammates. Humans adapting to every swarm tactic faster than the hive mind could adapt to theirs. But it was not just the combat effectiveness that disturbed observers. It was the psychological warfare. The 7th Psychological Operations Group began broadcasting into swarm-controlled space. They transmitted recordings of human soldiers operating in death world environments, demonstrating capabilities that seemed impossible. They sent tactical analyses showing how humans hunted their prey on Earth. They made sure the swarm understood that humans were not just another species to overwhelm. The swarm's hive mind began experiencing something it had never felt before. Uncertainty. Every time it adapted to human tactics, the humans changed their approach. Every time it tried to avoid human forces, the humans pursued. The swarm could not outlast them, could not outadapt them, could not break their will. For the first time in its existence, the swarm mind questioned whether it could win. Ambassador Chen Wei watched the reports from Council headquarters. She saw the casualty counts dropping as human forces took over offensive operations. She also saw the diplomatic dispatches coming from various council members. Some praised humanity's effectiveness. Others expressed fear about what they were seeing. "They are winning," Voresh said during a private meeting with Chen. "Your forces are achieving what we could not. But Ambassador, some of my colleagues are becoming frightened. They say your soldiers fight like demons. They say humans have no mercy." Chen considered her response carefully. "High Chancellor, let me share something with you. Last week, Corporal Yuki Tanaka nearly died saving refugees on Station Xander 7. She sacrificed her own heir to keep 3 civilians alive. That same day, Major Chen's battalion cleared a swarm hive and took prisoners, not for intelligence, but because they found evidence that some swarm creatures were separated from the hive mind and might be self-aware." She met his eyes. "My people fight hard because they evolved on a world that demanded they fight to survive every single day. But they also learned compassion, cooperation, and mercy in that same harsh environment. We are not demons, Chancellor. We are humans. We can be terrifyingly effective warriors when necessary, but we never forget our humanity. That is what makes us different from the swarm." Voresh was silent for a long moment. "I think I'm beginning to understand, Ambassador. Your species frightens us not because you are monsters, but because you are not. You can be both the warrior and the healer, sometimes in the same moment." "Yes," Chen agreed. "And right now the galaxy needs warriors. But when this is over, you will see the other side of humanity again. We remember how to be gentle. We choose to be most of the time. We just never forgot how to be dangerous when necessary." As the meeting ended, Chen received a priority message from the front lines. The swarm had begun a general retreat from 3 sectors. Human forces were pressing the advantage, pushing deeper into swarm territory. The galaxy was winning, but the cost was becoming clear. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The comfortable fiction that humans were just another civilized species had been shattered. The change happened slowly, then all at once. Across the galaxy, beings who had never given humanity much thought suddenly could not stop talking about them. The galactic information networks exploded with content about humans. Old veterans of the contact wars, their stories previously dismissed as exaggerations, found themselves in demand. News programs interviewed anyone who had served alongside human peacekeepers or traded with human merchants. Everyone wanted to understand the species that had turned the tide against the swarm. On the planet Thessia Major, a retired council officer named Garvin Toole sat before a camera crew, his 4 eyes reflecting decades of memories. "I served with human forces during the Proxima conflict. 50 years ago," he began, his voice rough with age. "It was a minor border dispute, barely worth mentioning in the history files, but I saw things that stayed with me. We were pinned down by hostile forces in a mountain pass. The terrain was brutal. Thin atmosphere, freezing temperatures, sharp rocks that cut through standard boots. My unit was ready to surrender." He paused, remembering. "The human platoon assigned to us, they just kept moving forward. Their lieutenant, I will never forget her name. Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo, she looked at that mountain like it was her backyard. She told us, 'This reminds me of the Himalayas. Not even that cold.' Then she led us straight up terrain that should have been impossible to climb. They carried our wounded. They shared their rations, and they never once complained about conditions that would kill most species." Garvin leaned toward the camera. "For 50 years I told people about this. No one believed me. They said I was exaggerating, that humans could not possibly be that capable. Now the galaxy is seeing what I saw, and I want to tell you all something important. What you are seeing now, this is them being restrained. This is them following rules of engagement and proportional force doctrine. If they truly wanted to be frightening, you would know." The interview went viral across 100 worlds. Similar stories emerged from thousands of sources. Piece by piece, the galaxy began to assemble a picture of humanity that conflicted with their comfortable assumptions. Academic institutions rushed to analyze the data. Xenobiologists published papers on human evolution. The facts were staggering. Humans had evolved from pursuit predators who hunted prey to exhaustion. Their skeletal structure was designed for endurance, not speed. Their sweat cooling system allowed them to operate in heat that would kill most species. Their high oxygen requirements meant they could function in thin atmospheres others could not. A paper from the University of Centauri became required reading at every major military academy. It detailed how Earth, a Class 12 death world, had shaped human evolution. The planet had deadly predators on every continent. It had environmental extremes from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. It had diseases, parasites, and plants that evolved specifically to kill. Humans had survived by becoming adaptable, persistent, and willing to cooperate despite their predatory nature. Humans, the paper concluded, represent a unique evolutionary path. They possess the hunting instincts of apex predators combined with the social cooperation, usually found only in prey species. This combination makes them extraordinarily effective at warfare while maintaining strong ethical frameworks. They can kill efficiently while still valuing individual life. This paradox is their greatest strength and makes them unpredictable to species that evolved along more typical paths. Military training programs across the galaxy began incorporating human tactics. The results were mixed. Other species could learn human strategies, but they could not replicate human physical capabilities or psychological resilience. High Chancellor Voresh found himself making an unprecedented journey. He traveled to the front lines to observe human operations personally. He needed to see with his own eyes what his people were saying about the humans. Major Marcus Chen met him at a forward operating base in the Epsilon sector. The base was on a volcanic world, with temperatures that made Voresh's environmental suit strain to keep him alive. The humans around him wore lighter gear and moved easily in the heat. "Welcome to Firebase Prometheus, Chancellor," Marcus said, offering the human handshake. "I apologize for the environment. We chose this location because the swarm cannot operate effectively in these temperatures." "And you can?" Voresh asked, struggling to breathe in the thin atmosphere. "We can," Marcus confirmed. "Earth has active volcanic regions. Humans have been living and working in similar environments for thousands of years. It is uncomfortable but manageable." Marcus led Voresh through the base. The Chancellor saw human soldiers conducting training exercises in the volcanic landscape. They ran carrying heavy equipment. They practiced combat maneuvers in temperatures that would cook most species. They did it all with a casual efficiency that shocked him. "How?" Voresh asked simply. Marcus considered the question. "Evolution, training, and choice, Chancellor. We evolved to survive harsh conditions. We train to push beyond even those natural limits. But most importantly, we choose to embrace discomfort as a tool. We seek out the harshest environments because we know our enemies cannot follow us there." He gestured to a group of soldiers preparing for a mission. Those soldiers are about to deploy to a swarm hive on an ice world. Temperatures below -100 degrees. Constant storms. The swarm is there because they thought no one would attack them in those conditions. My soldiers volunteered for this mission because they know the swarm does not understand what humans can endure. Voresh watched the soldiers load their equipment. They joked with each other, laughed, acted like they were preparing for a routine training exercise rather than a deadly combat mission in an impossible environment. "You evolved on a death world," Voresh said slowly. "And instead of leaving it behind when you reached space, you carried it with you. You seek out death world conditions because they feel like home." "Yes and no," Marcus replied. "We do not enjoy suffering, Chancellor. But we understand that our ability to operate where others cannot is an advantage. More than that, we know that the harshest conditions bring out our best qualities: cooperation, resilience, creativity. Earth taught us that survival requires all of these things." A soldier approached and saluted. "Major, we have a situation. Swarm forces have trapped a civilian transport. Council military cannot reach them in time. The transport will lose life support in 4 hours. Location?" Marcus asked immediately. "Sector 7 Gamma, inside a radiation belt. Council ships cannot enter without lethal exposure." Marcus was already moving. "Prep a rescue team. Full radiation gear. We launch in 10 minutes. He turned to Voresh. "Chancellor, you should return to your ship. This will be dangerous. I'm coming with you," Voresh said. "I need to see this." The rescue operation taught Voresh more about humans in 2 hours than years of diplomatic relations had. The human rescue ship flew directly into radiation levels that set off every alarm. The humans, protected by their suits and their apparently absurd radiation tolerance, worked calmly to evacuate the trapped civilians. Corporal Yuki Tanaka was there, moving through the damaged transport ship, treating injured passengers while radiation counters clicked ominously. She moved from patient to patient, her hands steady, her voice calm, reassuring frightened civilians in a dozen languages. "You will be fine," she told a Thessian child, her translator rendering the words softly. "We are taking you somewhere safe. You are very brave." The child looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are you an angel?" Yuki laughed gently. "No, little one. I am just a human. We are good at keeping people safe, that is all." Watching this, Voresh felt something shift in his understanding. These soldiers, these warriors who fought so effectively against the swarm, they were not machines of war. They were people who had chosen to become warriors to protect others. The violence was not what defined them. The choice to use that violence only in service of protection, that was what made them remarkable. The rescue completed with all civilians safe. As they returned to base, Voresh sat in silence, processing what he had witnessed. "Ambassador Chen tried to tell me," he said finally to Marcus. "She said humans could be warriors and healers simultaneously. I did not truly understand until now." "Most people do not," Marcus replied. "They see the combat footage and think we are monsters. They do not see Corporal Tanaka staying awake for 48 hours to keep patients alive. They do not see soldiers sharing their rations with refugees. They do not see us evacuating enemy wounded along with our own. Your species frightens the galaxy," Voresh admitted, "but perhaps for the wrong reasons. We should not fear your capacity for violence. We should fear our own capacity to misunderstand you." Marcus nodded slowly. "The galaxy invited us to help, Chancellor. But they judged us based on incomplete information. They forgot that the same traits that make us dangerous also make us protective. We fight hard because we care deeply. We endure impossible conditions because we will not abandon those who depend on us. That is what it means to be human." Later, back at Council headquarters, Voresh addressed an emergency session. He shared what he had witnessed. He showed footage of human operations, but this time with context. Combat footage paired with rescue operations. The war ended not with a final battle, but with a communication. The swarm, for the first time in its documented existence, requested a ceasefire. The message was simple, transmitted across all frequencies in every known language. The hive mind wanted to negotiate. The galaxy reacted with shock. Species that had studied the swarm for decades had never recorded any attempt at communication beyond basic threat displays. The swarm conquered and consumed. It did not talk. "They are frightened," General Okonkwo told the council during an emergency session. "Our intelligence indicates the hive mind has reorganized its entire strategic thinking. It has concluded that it cannot defeat humanity through conventional warfare. More significantly, it has concluded that humans will not stop until the threat is eliminated. It is choosing survival over conquest." High Chancellor Voresh looked at the human general with new understanding. "Your forces broke something that has terrorized the galaxy for years. You did it in months. How do we proceed?" "That depends on what you want, Chancellor," Okonkwo replied. "We can end the swarm completely. We have the capability, or we can accept their surrender and establish terms. The choice is yours. We are tools of council policy, nothing more." Ambassador Chen Wei spoke up. "Might I suggest that the council consider the precedent being set here? The swarm has learned that aggression against civilized space will be met with overwhelming force. That is a valuable lesson. But if we show mercy when an enemy surrenders, we teach a different lesson. We show that the galaxy has both strength and wisdom." The debate lasted hours. Some council members wanted complete elimination of the swarm. Others saw an opportunity for a lasting peace. Finally, Voresh made the decision. "We will negotiate. But humans will be part of the negotiation team. The swarm needs to understand that our mercy comes with guarantees." The negotiations took place on a neutral space station. The swarm sent representatives, individual creatures separated from the hive mind temporarily, able to think and communicate independently. It was a gesture of trust that surprised xenobiologists across the galaxy. Major Marcus Chen led the human negotiation team. He had requested Corporal Yuki Tanaka to accompany him. When asked why he wanted a medic at political negotiations, Marcus simply said that she represented the full spectrum of humanity. The swarm representative was a creature that looked like a combination of insect and machine. It communicated through a translation device, its words careful and deliberate. The hive mind has learned, it began. Humans are unlike any species we have encountered. You fight with the intensity of those facing extinction. You adapt faster than we can compensate. You operate in conditions we cannot survive. But more than this, you fight for concepts we did not understand. Protection, loyalty, compassion paired with violence. The hive mind has concluded that humans represent an evolutionary path we cannot match. Marcus listened carefully. The council asked for our help because you threatened their existence. We responded, that is what we do. But understand this, we do not want endless war. We want peace. Can you accept peace? The hive mind wishes to survive, the swarm representative said. We will withdraw from all contested territories. We will accept borders and limitations. We ask only for our continued existence. Yuki spoke up, surprising everyone. During the war, I treated a swarm creature that had been separated from the hive. It was frightened and in pain. When I helped it, the creature showed something I did not expect. Gratitude. Are there more like that one? Individuals who can exist outside the hive mind? The representative was silent for a moment. Yes. We have discovered that some of us can exist independently. It is new, disturbing to the hive mind, but possible. Then perhaps, Yuki said, peace means more than just ending the fighting. Perhaps it means helping your species discover individuality. Humans can help with that if you are willing. The negotiations established terms that surprised the galaxy. The swarm would withdraw to specific sectors, far from council space. Human observers would be stationed in swarm territory to ensure compliance, but also to help those swarm creatures who wanted to leave the hive mind. In exchange, the swarm would be allowed to exist, with the understanding that any future aggression would be met with immediate and overwhelming response. It was, as one analyst put it, peace through strength tempered with compassion. Very human. As the war wound down, human military forces began standing down. The galaxy watched this process with nearly as much interest as they had watched the war. Could the humans actually stop? Could they return to peaceful roles after demonstrating such overwhelming combat capability? Observer Zixlar, who had spent months documenting human operations, published his comprehensive report. It became the most downloaded document in galactic history. In it, he detailed not just human combat effectiveness but their full nature. He wrote about watching soldiers fight with terrifying efficiency, then immediately help wounded enemies. He documented the human practice of honoring fallen foes with respectful burial. He recorded countless examples of humans choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. His conclusion was simple. Humans are dangerous not because they are violent, but because they can choose when to be violent and when to be merciful. They possess the capacity for both extremes and the wisdom to know which to employ. This makes them unpredictable to those who think in simple terms of predator and prey. Humans are both and neither. They are simply human, and the galaxy is better for their presence even when that presence is frightening. The report sparked a fundamental shift in how the galaxy viewed humanity. Fear remained, but it was now accompanied by respect and increasingly by a desire to understand. Major Marcus Chen returned to Earth after 8 months of deployment. His battalion had suffered casualties, though far fewer than expected. Every soldier had been recovered and returned home, living or honored dead. That was the human way. At a ceremony honoring the Special Operations Forces, General Okonkwo addressed the assembled troops and watching galaxy. You were asked to be warriors, she said. You answered that call with distinction. You reminded the galaxy why humanity survived Earth. But more importantly, you showed them why humanity deserves a place in galactic civilization. You were warriors when needed, but you never stopped being human. You showed mercy when possible. You protected the weak. You honored your enemies. You represented the best of our species. She paused, looking across the ranks of soldiers. Now comes the harder part. You must return to your regular lives. You must be civilians again, neighbors again, ordinary people again. The galaxy will watch this too. They need to see that humans can put down the weapons when the fighting is done. Show them that our strength comes not from our capacity for violence, but from our capacity to choose peace. The troops returned to their lives. Soldiers became teachers, engineers, artists, and parents. The Special Operations Command reduced to standby status. The weapons were put away, but not forgotten. Years later, Ambassador Chen Wei and High Chancellor Voresh met for lunch at a cafe on the orbital station above Earth. It had become a tradition, this informal meeting between old colleagues who had weathered a crisis together. Young species are joining the council, Voresh said, sipping his beverage. The first thing we teach them is about humanity. It is required education now. What do you tell them? Chen asked, curious. The truth, that humans evolved on a death world and carry that world with them, that they are capable of extraordinary violence and extraordinary compassion, often simultaneously, that they will be your greatest allies or your most relentless enemies depending entirely on your actions toward them, and those they protect. Voresh set down his cup. But most importantly, we tell them this. Humans chose to join galactic civilization. They did not have to. They could have remained isolated, safe on their death world. They chose to be part of something larger than themselves. They chose to share their strength with others. And when we needed that strength desperately, they chose to help us even though they knew it would change how the galaxy saw them forever. Chen smiled. We did what needed to be done. That is all? No, Ambassador. You did more than that. You saved the galaxy while maintaining your humanity. You proved that strength and compassion are not opposites. You showed us that the most dangerous species in the galaxy is also the most trustworthy, precisely because you understand the weight of that danger. Below them, Earth turned in its orbit, a blue and green world, beautiful and deadly, that had shaped humanity into what they were. A species that could walk through fire and choose not to burn others. A species that could be warriors when necessary but preferred to be builders, teachers and friends. The galaxy was safer now, not just because humanity could fight, but because humanity knew when fighting was the last resort. They had remembered their fear when the Deathworlders' special forces deployed. But they had learned something more important. They had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not their ability to wage war. It was their ability to choose peace even when they could easily choose otherwise. The weapons remained ready, the soldiers remained trained, and the Special Operations Command remained alert. But they were what they had always been, a last resort.